I like that you're in a Rangers jersey and you've just completely, you're like, you know what? Jets, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with the Jets. Mets' season's over.
No one can call me a front runner with the teams I root for.
This is true.
So,
but there's also other names we can call you. I'm like, if you're just doing this to avoid name calling, like we've got plenty of names.
That's fine. I just don't want to be called a front runner. I'll deal with anything else.
Fair enough. You're not like Jay Croucher. Jay Croucher is.
He latches on to wherever his futures bets are. Shamelessly. Giants 80-1. Now we haven't heard the Giants name on this show in weeks.
My wife, who pays attention to nothing, my wife literally the other day said to me, she goes, "How's Jay's Giants bet coming?" And I'm like,
in a serious manner.
Yeah, in a serious manner.
Yes. You should be like,
coming along.
Yeah.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Happy Love-Hate Day. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. That's right, front runners drink for free. You drink for free.
Unbelievable. Just my name again being slandered on my day off. Nice. Wednesday tradition at this point.
Well,
really
just so
we
I
know
can
you don't
answer
watch.
My wife, how is your Jets' future to win the NFC East bet going?
My Giants' future.
Oh, Giants. Sorry, what did I say? What I Mets?
Mixed up with the Jets, which is fair because they're both not great.
Sorry, exactly. Sorry. Yeah, how's your New York Giants bet to win the NFC East futures bet going?
Starting to worry it's not going to win. Yeah. But the good news is they're only 3 games back. The bad neuse is they're terrible at football and probably not going to make up that 3-game deficit.
Technically.
Yeah. No, the Giants are on life support to me. I'm a free agent again. Who will my next team be? Sure, his future's better. Maybe the Seahawks. I like their price to win the NFC West.
Sure.
Maybe I'll be a
Vikings,
Seahawks.
Rams tonight. Maybe one of them will win your heart tonight.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of being Australian in America.
You can just do what you want, fan-wise?
My wife was like, well, we have 2 kids who were born in Denver, and we lived in Denver, so shouldn't we be Broncos fans? I'm like, did you see Bo Nix play against the Saints? I don't know if we want to buy into this for the next half decade.
That's right. You have higher hopes for the future of your children.
Exactly right.
Of course.
Yeah, we can do better.
Yeah, don't sell them into something terrible.
Still on the prowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I unfortunately, my son Connor, he's a Commanders fan like I am because I got to him early.
That's how it goes.
But now things are looking up. But first 18 years of his life, a little tough.
Yeah,
a little tough.
Well, yeah. Now it's good that you've wadded through that absolute mess, and now when you get to the other side, victory will taste it. So, you know what the worst thing would be in the world? The worst thing to be in the world would be a Red Sox fan. Because you already went through all of that, and then you had your moment in 2004, and you're never going to top that. Like, you're never going to top that moment.
True.
With the Commanders, you still get to have your moments.
Yeah, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, if you're a free agent, feel free to jump on board.
It's okay to be a front runner in this situation.
Yeah,
you drink for free today.
Yeah, I'd have a fair bit of Dan Quinn Coach of the Year, so if he gets home, then we'll see.
There we go. It's Thursday, loaded show because we got a lot to go through for love-hate throughout the weekend. We'll also preview Vikings-Rams tonight for Thursday Night Football with our best bets. Of course, Matthew's top players in the matchup as well. Let's jump right into love-hate and start with the running backs this week. And Joe Mixon tops the love list, and Joe Mixon has looked great in a Texans uniform this year. We got to hear from C.J. Stroud on how long he's been watching Joe Mixon have this level of success.
I've been watching Joe for a long time. I think I was in middle school or high school. He was at Oklahoma, and he was a really good player there. So, I've always known him to be a really good player. Played against him last year. He was really good. So, now I'm just glad he's on my team, and been able to, really open up a lot of things for our offense. And I think, we can continue to, use him in a lot of different ways. And, he's going to even make me better. So, I'm just really blessed to have him on the team.
Number one, that makes you feel old. Yeah. C.J. Stroud's been watching Joe Mixon, is now teammate since middle school. Number two, Mixon's got the Colts, which is great news, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Colts give up 125 rushing yards per game to running backs. That's third most in the NFL, and he's just getting a massive volume. He's played 3 full games this year, right? Just 3 full games. In those 3 games, he's averaging 25 touches. He has a 12% target share, over 26 fantasy points per game. He's just been an absolute superstar in fantasy football when he's getting the work, and he expects to get the work this Sunday against Indianapolis. By the way, he's also second in red zone rushes per game. He's had at least 5 of them in all of his 3 full games. So very good chance of him to get into the end zone for those of you who like to bet anytime touchdowns. But Joe Mixon is an easy top 5 play for me this week.
Yeah, and the good news is we've already seen him play the Colts, and he had 1 million yards and 50 touchdowns. He absolutely destroyed them, so I don't know why that wouldn't continue. The good thing about Mixon in this offense is that even in Cincinnati, he always excelled when they did zone runs. That's what he is best at. He is one cut, get into the gap. He's not going to be, I don't think he's just a man gap kind of scheme runner, but he's being used to his fullest potential. Bobby Slowick for maybe to a detriment to the team, loves running the football. So I think this is going to continue. Do you think they change anything on offense, Connor, like this week going forward, or is it just going to be still this run-heavy attack? Because the offense overall isn't really clicking.
No, I don't. I think this is who Bobby Slowick is, and I think this is who the Texans are without Nico Collins.
Yeah,
For a
exactly.
while, we remained hopeful that, hey, all the targets now go to Diggs and Tank Dell, and Schultz has gotten involved a little bit more, but they lean on the run. That's who they are. It's who they want to be, and it works against this Colts team.
Yeah, and I understand Cedric Stroud didn't have a great game fantasy-wise or production-wise last week against the Packers, but they came within a last-second field goal of beating Green Bay on the road. I mean, again, I don't think that game was as much of a disaster for the Texans that everyone seems to think that it was, at least to me. I mean, again, they move the ball. Brandon McManus misses that field goal kick at the very end of the game. I think it's a different story.
Right.
If the Texans get a stop on that final drive,
it'd be
it's a
6-1,
different story.
yeah.
Exactly. The Texans are just fine, but more importantly, they are moving the ball on the ground. They give it to Joe Mixon a ton. He should be in a lot of DFS lineups this week as well. You loved running backs against the Colts, especially good running backs that get a lot of work, which is what Joe Mixon is.
Joe Mixon, RB5. Right behind him at RB6 is Kenneth Walker against the Bills. Jay, Buffalo is allowing 160 scrimmage yards per game to running backs this season.
Yeah, you could make the case that rest of the season, Ken Walker is a top 4, top 6 running back. Rest of the way, he's been that good. And the thing with Buffalo is it perhaps hasn't been magnified that much because they keep on winning these games by a lot of points and teams just aren't in run scripts. But you've been able to run on the Bills. Think about what Derrick Henry did to them. Now he's an outlier, but think about how they revived Breece Hall as well a couple of weeks ago. So certainly you can run on Buffalo and the Seahawks, particularly we'll see with the health of DK Metcalf, they might need to lean on the run.
Just to give some stats to exactly what you're saying about how, yes, you can run on the Buffalo Bills. In fact, you can do whatever you want with a running back to the Buffalo Bills. They are bottom 3 in the NFL in terms of most receptions, most receiving yards, and most receiving touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs. And I bring that up specifically here, as my phone goes off for some reason.
Television, Matthew.
That every
Brain malfunction.
No, you know it's weird. I got a brand new phone, and like you can see it there. Like my volume is down, but for whatever reason, like I don't know what's going on with this. I don't know.
You should get another new phone that's better.
I got another new phone that's better in theory. We'll see. Anyway, back to Ken Walker and why we like him so much this week. Good luck to the social team of clipping that off. Look, again, as I mentioned, Bills bottom 3 in terms of most receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs. 40% of Ken Walker's fantasy points this year have come through the passing game. They're using him on third down a lot. They're using him in the passing game, which is important because obviously Geno Smith and that offense likes to throw a bunch. By the way, we know that Walker gets a ton of work. Running backs that see at least 15 touches against Buffalo so far this year, averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So Walker mixed practice on Wednesday. It feels like a veteran's rest day. I'm not worried about that, at least not as of yet. So Walker should be good to go and is a top 6 play for me against the Buffalo Bills. I don't understand
There's a
gotta
button
nuke
on the
it.
left side usually on iPhones, Matthew.
No,
Yeah.
Yep.
hold for silent. Okay,
There you
there
go.
we go.
Oh, hold for
There you go.
silent.
I have to hold it for silent. I
Hold
didn't
for
realize
silent
that.
gets
Yeah, I
through.
thought I just could push it.
No, you got to hold it.
Kenneth Walker, RB6.
Don't mind me learning technology on TV.
Kareem Hunt comes in as RB11. He's got the plummeting Raiders. Kareem Hunt has taken over this backfield, so much so, Matthew, he's averaging over 17 points per game in his 3 games with Kansas City, off the couch and into fantasy relevance.
Well, not only off the couch, but by the way, he was bad last year.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's
been for a little while now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's shocking how productive he has been, but I guess that's just sort of the magic of Kansas City and Andy Reid. You know, between Juju Smith-Schuster, Kareem Hunt, and now DeAndre Hopkins. Like, this is like the greatest 2017 fantasy football team of all time.
Get the Sean McCoy back.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Melvin Gordon, where are you at? But in his 3 games, as you see it there on your screen, the 3 games that Kareem Hunt has played with the Chiefs this year, he's the 8th best running back in fantasy on a points per game basis. He's averaging over 17 points per game, and the workload has been there. 52 touches over the past 2 games, including 100% of the Chiefs' running back touches in the red zone. Every starting running back that has faced the Raiders so far this year has scored at least 15 fantasy points. He's a top 12 play for me. Kareem Hunt, again, by the way, we'll see how long it lasts. There might be a window here after this game to try to sell Kareem Hunt because Pacheco is going to come back. Unlike Rashee Rice, Pacheco is going to play again this season, and I feel like we're nearing that window where we're going to see Pacheco again, maybe week 10, 11, something in that range.
Yeah, I would worry a bit though that Kareem Hunt has looked so good, and I get that. Look, he doesn't look like Derrick Henry or anything, but he looks explosive enough for what they need to do, and he looks healthy, and he looks better than he did last year. That I wonder if he's going to still, with Pacheco coming back off the injury, think about guys coming off broken legs. Look at how Tony Pollard struggled last year, being the workhorse back. Whether Kareem Hunt maintains a role in the offense, which will not make him necessarily fantasy relevant, but will diminish Pacheco's value.
There's no question about that. I think Hunt has certainly earned a bigger role until they'll use it. And Andy Reid has liked to use multiple running backs, and to your point, wanted to ease Pacheco back into it, especially given the fact that they want to try to win a third Super Bowl in a row. But I'm just saying, like, there might be a window here to try to get more value out of Hunt than what we think he'll be in the fantasy playoffs, for example.
Others receiving votes here. Hopefully a get-right week for Jordan Mason. He's had a tough 3-week stretch, but he's got the Cowboys, which really helps him here. Javonte Williams against the Panthers. What more needs to be said about that? Panthers' run defense couldn't stop anyone on this desk right now. Jaylen Warren against the Giants. Matthew sneaks in as a top 30 play with Russ under center. More dump-off opportunities for the Steelers' second running back.
So, in Russ's first start last week, he had a season high in touches. He had 14. He played 50% of the snaps in Week 7, and it's a great matchup against the Giants, who give up 5.3 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That's second highest in the NFL. Feels like we're still another week away from Christian McCaffrey. I still hold out hope that we're going to see him on Thursday night, but at the moment, it looks like it's going to be Jordan Mason going against that Cowboys rush defense that's 27th in the NFL and has given up the second most rushing touchdowns this year. And then you mentioned Javonte Williams, like you had me at Carolina. 7 of the 8 running backs to see the Panthers so far this year have scored at least 17 fantasy points. Javonte Williams has kind of taken over this backfield, and Sean Payton has realized that, hey, when Bo Nix doesn't throw, good things happen. So whether it's Bo Nix running or Javonte Williams running, like that's the key to the Broncos offense, is just limiting Bo Nix's passing.
Yeah.
So I think in a game where they're favored at home against Carolina, with Bryce Young starting, by the way, we expect maybe there's some turnovers or short drives. So Broncos should be in good field position in this one, and a number of drives that start, on their own 40, their own 50 in Carolina territory. Javonte Williams is a top 20 play for me this week.
Patrick Surtain was back at practice yesterday as well. So if you have Surtain on Diontae Johnson and Bryce Young throwing to other people on the Panthers offense, doesn't seem like an amazing recipe for success. So
we're going to get there with Diontae Johnson. Take one guess which list he's on this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, Haight is a minus 50,000 favorite there in that head-to-head.
It's just worth noting, just since you brought it up, just real quickly, Surtain has not been, he did practice in full yesterday, but he's not officially been cleared from the concussion protocol.
Yes, but a very good sign that he was out there yesterday. Bo Nix is a 9.5-point favorite over another NFL team, which shows you where the Panthers are at the moment. Now, a lot of that is, all of that is about Denver's defense, but still, this should be a situation. It'll be the best game script that Javonte Williams gets all season, you would think.
We kick off the running back hate list with Alvin Kamara, who's got the Chargers. Not only are the Chargers allowing the third fewest fantasy points per game to running backs, but an interesting situation with Kamara. This from Nick Underhill, who does a really good job covering the Saints.
Yeah, he does.
Alvin Kamara said his PT, Dr. Jose Tienda, has been key to keeping him on the field. Even got his broken hand right. Kamara broke it against the Chiefs. A broken hand for a running back.
Feels important. Feels like you need both hands when you're carrying the ball.
Especially when you literally are the offense half the time through the pass game and the run game.
He is, but broken hand or no, he's outside my top 20 this week going against the Chargers. As you mentioned, Connor, you mentioned they allow the third fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. They've also given up only 2 touchdowns this entire year to opposing running backs. Just 2. And in fact, in Spencer Rattler's 2 starts, Alvin Kamara is averaging 2.8 yards per touch. Like, he's gotten 31 touches. He has 88 total yards. Like, it's just brutal. The offense just seems to completely ground to a halt under Spencer Rattler. I don't expect it to get much better on the road at the Chargers.
Alvin Kamara has 11 catches since he's broken his hand. How do you do that? How do you catch football 11 times in an NFL game?
Dr. Jose Tienda.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Unbelievable.
Shout out Dr. Jose Tienda. Not expecting a bunch of success from Kamara in this one.
Yeah, I think he's just you hope that the PPR scammery comes to the fore, and he's a RB2 flex type of guy at this point. They're 7-point dogs against the Chargers, whose defense has been, I don't really understand, Connor, how the Chargers defense has been so good with their personnel, but coaching.
It's coaching.
Khalil Mack's having a really solid year, and I guess that's enough. But yeah, this isn't a favorable matchup at all.
Sometimes it is coaching. I mean, again, I don't think the Commanders have – the Commanders have a couple of guys on the defensive line that are really good.
Right.
But generally speaking, I don't think the Commanders have anything good defensively, especially linebackers on. And they're like a top 6 defense these
They have
days.
a puncher's chance
They have a
because of the game plans.
100%.
Yeah.
Like in terms of EPA per play, like they're
Right.
up there in terms of lowest allowed.
They've gotten better the past few weeks.
They absolutely have. No, I get it that they've beaten up on some bad offenses, but still, like that's what a good defense should
Look
do.
what they did to Arizona. That was impressive. Arizona have a solid offense, and the Commanders completely shut them down a few weeks ago.
Even Carolina in junk time. Like Andy Dalton's been able to move the ball.
Yeah.
Yes, they've lost,
They
but
had
they
no
put up like 21 points on the Bengals, I think, off the top of my head.
they
Like,
moved
I
the
mean,
ball in that
they
game.
moved the ball against the Bengals, and they couldn't do anything against the Commanders. And so, and by the way, seeing how explosive the Ravens' offense has been, like they obviously the Ravens beat the Commanders, but they didn't blow them out of the
They didn't
water.
embarrass them
They
like they
didn't
do to
embarrass
everyone
them like
else.
they have,
Yes, to everyone.
like they have like the Buccaneers, like they have the Bills. Like I mean, like real teams.
Yep.
So anyway, and again, I'm. Because this is my superpower, turning any conversation into a one about the Commanders. But I'm just an example of how coaching matters so much.
Yep, definitely.
And so yes, the Bolts are well coached.
Nick Chubb also makes the hate list. Jay, we love the return of a healthy Nick Chubb, but we pretty much hate any running back that goes up against Baltimore. They have the number 1 ranked rush defense. They've allowed a league low 3.1 yards per carry to running backs. It's just basically you don't stand a chance if you're facing their run defense.
Yeah, and also Cleveland, obviously the ecosystem of that offense, even if it gets better without Deshaun Watson, with Jameis Winston, the O-line has really struggled.
Yeah.
And the thing with the O-line too is that last year it was really banged up. This year, all those guys are back, like Wills, Bitonio, Postage, Conklin. They're all playing. It's just that it feels like they've just gotten old at the same time.
It's 2 things, right? They've declined. There's no denying that. The performance has been under their expectations. And number 2, Deshaun Watson runs himself into more sacks than anyone in the league. So when you have a quarterback with 0 pocket presence, you lose not only your confidence as an offensive lineman, but also the timing of how you're playing in your pass sets. The whole thing is broken there. I don't know if Jameis fixes that, but Watson sunk that entire offense.
I think they'll be able to move the ball just because the Ravens secondary has struggled, right? But listen, the Browns are a 9-point favorite in this game as well, and Chubb played on just 23% of passing plays last week. He had just a 19% route participation. Passing game involvement has never been a big part of Nick Chubb's game. So if you're starting him this week, you're really hoping that he falls into the end zone, which of course is always an opportunity. There's always a chance with that with Nick Chubb, but he's outside my top 30 just given how I think you attack the Ravens defense, which is through the air, the fact that they're big underdogs. I think this is a big Jameis Winston having to throw from behind game, and just that's not going to be a lot of Nick Chubb once the game script gets that way. They're so good against the run.
Yeah, I will say with Chubb, this is obviously a bad matchup, bad week. I do think it's very encouraging that they gave him 10 carries in the first half last week. And that felt like that was the plan because then he just got no work in the second half. But for him to get 10 carries in the first half, like I thought he was going to get like 6 carries for the game. And the fact that he was able to get that workload bodes well going forward, just not this week.
So Chubb comes in as RB33. Right behind him is Alexander Mattison as RB34. Matthew, he's got the Chiefs. Kansas City is allowing a league-low 14.3 points per game to running backs this season. We saw Jordan Mason unable to get anything going against them. It's hard to believe that Alexander Mattison will be able to.
Week 3 is the last time a running back got a touchdown against the Chiefs. We're in week 8. Just to do that's 5 weeks,
That is
Jay.
5 full weeks.
Did
That's
that
more
math
than
in
a
my
month.
head. I don't want to brag, but I literally did that math right here in my head.
That's why you're the best, Matthew.
Thank you,
That's why you're
Jay.
the
I
best.
appreciate it. There you go. Just whatever. I got a lot going on this noggin here as well. In fact, not once this entire year have the Chiefs allowed 70 yards from scrimmage to an opposing running back. Zamir White came back last week, and I don't know that Zamir White is anything you have to be worried about here, but feels like Alexander Mattison is going to be the head of a sort of a 3-headed committee between him and Zamir White and Amir Abdullah. So just not loving Alexander Mattison. I get that last week the workload was there, but going against the Chiefs, negative game script, also outside my top 30.
Move over to the pass catchers for love-hate here. Drake London tops the list. We got to hear from Drake London this week on the Falcons' impressive wins against division rivals early in this season.
Did he say bird up? He promised he would say
Wait and
bird
see.
up.
Wait and see.
Oh no, it's amazing, and we got to go out there and try to win that game. It's a needed situation right now, so go to Tampa, handle business, and not to say that we'll be set, but it's definitely will look bright for us after that.
Close game against Tampa the last time. What was the biggest takeaway from facing them from a receiver standpoint?
Just doing my job. That's pretty much it. Just finding open zones, beating man coverage, whatever it has to be in order to get the job done. I think that's just the sole focus this week.
Bird up.
Bird up, Drake London.
Bird up.
He didn't say it, but he will.
Drake
will this
London
week.
will say it this week because he's got the Bucks. They're allowing the third most yards per game to the slot. Detective Drake, Matthew, is having a hell of a time playing more slot snaps this season.
Yeah, since week 3, 60% of his targets have come in the slot to Detective Drake London as well. By the way, no player has a higher red zone target share than Drake London this year. 48% what he has. And why do I mention how much work he gets in the red zone? Because the Buccaneers have allowed at least one touchdown to a wide receiver in every game this year. And so you're saying to me, all right, pretty likely that a wide receiver scores a touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they've given up at least one in every game this year. Who's most likely to get that touchdown? It's Detective Drake London. He's a top 5 play for me this week.
Yeah, he had over 100 yards from the slot alone when they played Tampa Bay last time out. And this Bucs secondary there's just nothing there. Like, they just have no prayer.
They've had injuries, they've had underperformances, and quite frankly, Todd Bowles is usually great coaching the secondary. It's been dreadful this year.
Yep.
They have no answer right now. Baker Mayfield is just dropping back 50 times a week trying to find a way to keep them in games.
Antoine Winfield is back, and he wasn't playing in
big
that
difference.
previous game against the Falcons. But still, I mean, Antoine Winfield was out there against the Ravens. Didn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Which is good times because you have Baker Mayfield, right? Because
do.
he traded you,
Yes.
Baker Mayfield.
For Cooper Kupp,
Yes.
won them straight up.
And you're playing me
I
this
don't know
week.
what team Cooper
luck.
Kupp's going to be playing on next week.
Could be great for you.
Could be great for you.
Yeah, could be. I was kind of hoping the Chiefs would get him, but I think that
That ship sailed.
Yeah, it's been nuked, so to
Well, NFL insider
Nice.
Chad Ochocinco says he said the Buccaneers. He suggested 2 teams. He said the Buccaneers and who's the other team that he suggested? I forget. But he put it out there because he actually had Devontae Adams to the Jets before anyone else.
speak. To
so
be fair,
he
so
put
did
that
half of America.
No, I know. But he sort of reported it officially. I don't know. Listen, Chad knows a lot of. Chad's still very close with a lot of players in the league, obviously. So
He definitely is.
He said he's definitely going, and he tweeted it out there. It's something like it was like the Buccaneers and I think the 49ers were the 2 teams that he threw out there. So we could see. I feel like
Deebo Samuel play in the slot?
Yeah, it feels like the Buccaneers are more realistic, given that they just lost Chris Godwin, and I can't imagine the Niners wanting to trade.
It's a weird one.
Cooper Kupp within the division. Just have him torture you
The Bucs
like
much
twice a
better
week.
than the Rams at this point with all their injuries. That doesn't really seem like a massive upgrade.
might
No, but
think they are.
I think that if you're the Buccaneers, you sort of feel like, again, we're going to get Mike Evans back in a couple weeks. Like, you've got an opportunity this year. Like, the team's playing really well. Baker's playing at a high level. Again, you don't know how much longer you're going to have. I mean, Godwin's a free agent at the end of this year. Evans signed the
that's a good point.
extension, but
That's a good
like they have a window right here, right? And so, hey, we get Cooper Kupp to play the slot. We develop our younger players. We got this 3-headed monster at running back. Our defense hopefully gets healthier. Mike Evans comes back in 2 weeks. We don't think the NFC South is like that impossible a division to win. It's really just us and the Falcons. Right. So I think if you're the Buccaneers, it makes sense to, again, I don't know if you want to give up a 2, but maybe, I don't know, if you think you got a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, tell you what, we'll give you a 3. We'll eat some of the contract. We'll give you a conditional 2. I don't know.
Certainly doesn't feel like he's going to be on the Rams.
No. Stefon Diggs is our next player on the love list here. Jay comes in as wide receiver 15 for Matthew. It's as simple as this. Since Nico Collins has been out, Diggs has a 28% target share in those 2 games.
Yep, he gets a very favorable matchup against an opponent who he scored against back when they played the first time around. Now, the good thing is that they can't throw the ball any less than they're currently throwing it. So presumably, they will throw the ball more. I think Stefon Diggs has established himself as the clear number 1 guy in the passing game without Nico Collins. It's just that how much are they going to turn the passing dial up? And you worry a little bit about the fact that they were so successful in the previous matchup running with Joe Mixon. But Diggs, I think he's must start. He's a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, by the way, and again, we talked about that previous game against the Colts again where Diggs scored twice. It was just absolutely awesome. No team has allowed more touchdowns to the slot than the Indianapolis Colts. 55% of Diggs' routes, Diggsy, comes from the slot. So, as you mentioned, he's a top 15 play for me this week.
Jayden Reed next up, right behind him at wide receiver 16. We talk about this Jacksonville secondary all the time. Over the past 4 weeks, they're allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers.
I don't know if you're sensing a theme here, but, Drake London plays a lot in the slot. Stefon Diggs plays a lot in the slot. Where does Jayden Reed play? A lot.
Slot merchants.
In the slot merchants. I'm still looking for my house band. The slot merchants. I need somebody to step up. Give me a local Connecticut band that wants to be the slot merchants. But one of the reasons why we think slot merchants are going to eat this week and continue to eat, and Jayden Reed is one of them, the Jaguars have allowed at least one touchdown to the slot in 5 straight games, right? They've allowed the second most yards after the catch to opposing wide receivers, and Jayden Reed is top 5 among wide receivers in terms of yards after the catch per reception. Jordan Love is playing at a very high level. Maybe a heads up, a little foreshadowing about who might be on the love list when we get to quarterbacks. Anyway, Jayden Reed, again, easy top 20 play. I know it's a little bit of mix and match because they got the 4 guys out there, but feels like Jayden Reed. I think Jayden Reed's the most talented of the 4.
I would agree.
I think he's the most talented of the 4, and he plays the slot. So it's really like Watson and Dobbs and Wicks on the outside that sort of rotate in and out, and it feels like Reed's role is the most secure of the 4 guys.
Yeah, the beauty of Reed is he's a unicorn in the fact that he plays the slot, but then he's also an explosive deep guy as well, out of the slot. So it's been a little bit underwhelming the past 2 weeks for Reed. I think that's just the nature of this offense. It's just sometimes the matchups are going to be more favorable elsewhere. But he did hurt his ankle against Arizona a couple of weeks ago. I suspect that he may have been getting over that, and so hopefully he's healthier now. And yeah, he's the most talented guy, and I think he'll get the most opportunity.
David Njoku is the tight end on the love list here. He is tight end 2 for Matthew this week. Jay, talk about it. You can't run on the Ravens, but you could throw on them. Baltimore is allowing the 2nd most yards per game to tight ends.
Yeah, look at what Cade Otton was able to do to Baltimore on Monday night. David Njoku, he's the number 1 option in an NFL passing offense, and he did seem to have something of a connection with Jameis. He was able to catch the touchdown pass at the end from Jameis. He looks fully healthy. What was ailing him in the first month of the season seems recovered from that. So David Njoku is a locked-in, must-start tight end for now, Matthew.
Yeah, he had 14 targets, to your point about the connection with Winston. He had 14 targets in Week 7. That led all tight ends. And in fact, over the past 2 weeks, a 29.6% target share for David Njoku. So a massive amount of volume going against the Ravens, and three of the four tight ends that have seen at least 7 targets against Baltimore so far this year have scored at least 15 fantasy points. So David Njoku, whose game day outfits are second to none, is my number 2 tight end. I'm still thinking about that outfit. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you imagine if you came in with that?
With just wearing all that?
Yeah.
Just wearing that?
Yeah, on Sunday morning.
See, I would love to. The problem is that I'm going to be honest with you guys. Like, I know. Well, you just, I mean, you guys look at me and you're like, look at how virile Matthew is. What a man Matthew is. But I got to be honest with you. If I stood next to David Njoku wearing the same outfit, like, you'd see that, I'm merely human.
Yes.
I'm not.
That's what it would take.
That's fair. I'm not built like David Njoku. I just want to be honest out there to, all the people watching who might be wondering, exactly what's going on underneath here. Like,
Sorry, anyone, for conjuring those images
thank you, Jay.
as you watch.
It's great to have you back.
On a Thursday afternoon, perhaps with your children. Not anymore, though.
No, my poor wife is contractually obligated, legally required.
Absolutely.
She's legally required to deal with it. No one else should have to.
Some others receiving votes: DeVonta Smith against the Bengals, Jaxon Smith-Njigba against the Bills. They both come in as top 25 wide receivers. Jauan Jennings against the Cowboys, wide receiver 29. Cedric Tillman.
Yep.
Top 50 play against those Ravens.
Yeah.
Must be great to be starting him against Matthew this week.
It's going to be annoying when you use Cedric Tillman to beat
Can't
me
wait for the text thread just melting and imploding.
In the League of Assholes. As I said, I've bought a bunch of burner phones so I can just blow up your phone left and right, Connor. But look, we talked about DeVonta Smith yesterday. Keep it open and close it out again. Like, I know he had the bad week last week, but they only attempted 15 passes. Since week 3, though, he gets right. I think Smith gets back off the schneid against the Bengals. Since week 3, Cincinnati allows the 8th most yards per game to opposing wide receivers. You mentioned JSN. DK Metcalf is week to week with that MCL sprain, so JSN should get a bunch more targets. And in the 4 games where he's gotten at least 7 targets this year, he's averaging 15.1 fantasy points per game. He's a top 25 play for me this week. Jauan Jennings, you mentioned that again. Injury opportunity here with no Brandon Ayuk. We'll see about Deebo Samuel. But over the past 4 weeks, the Cowboys allow the 3rd most yards per game to opposing wide receivers. And he's had at least 1 end zone target in 4 of his last 5 games, Jauan Jennings has. So I think there's a chance that he scores. He's a top 30 play for me this week. You mentioned Cedric Tillman. Again, we've talked about that Ravens game a decent amount. You're going to have to, they're 9-point underdogs. They're going to have to throw Baltimore bottom 3 in terms of most fantasy points and yards allowed to opposing wide receivers, despite how good they are. And Cade Otton, again, no Evans or Godwin. So Cade Otton, very quietly since week 3, is the 3rd best tight end in fantasy football. He's had a 20% target share over that stretch, and I expect that to continue with no Godwin. over 12 fantasy points per game in games in which he gets at least 6 targets this year.
Yep. Connor, on DeVonta Smith, is there something wrong with Jalen Hurts? Because it feels like Jalen Hurts at the moment is just either running the ball or throwing go balls to A.J. Brown, and there's just nothing really in between.
He has totally regressed as a passer, and it's the passing in rhythm with timing, intermediate passing, the lack of confidence throwing. There's just no other way around it. He's gotten worse.
It feels like there was a lot of stuff on film, particularly from the Giants game and the Cleveland game as well, where like he's seeing a guy open and he's just not throwing.
Hesitating.
There's just hesitation. It seems like there's just something off.
I don't think he trusts Sirianni's offense, and I think that's been an issue for 2 years now.
Yeah. And DeVonta Smith, he is the guy who really suffers from that. Because A.J. Brown's always going to be, Hurts is always going to feel fine chucking it deep to A.J. Brown one-on-one. Like, that's not going away, and A.J. Brown will come down with that a lot. And fantasy-wise, it doesn't really matter because Jalen Hurts is still going to run the ball. He's still going to get his rushing touchdowns. He's going to get the deep passing touchdowns. But I do worry a bit about DeVonta Smith.
Because they run the ball so effectively with Saquon Barkley as well, and Goddard gets mixed in there as well. But I do think this week he has a nice game against the Bengals.
We hinted at this earlier on the hate list, but Diontae Johnson is our first wide receiver. He's wide receiver 32 for you, Matthew. It's as simple as this. Bryce Young has started 2 games this year with Diontae Johnson. In those games, he's averaged 4.2 points per game.
Yeah, is that good? Because I don't think that's good. He's had under 20 yards in both of those games, right? He had a 54% catch rate in both of those games. And now you got to face the Broncos and Patrick Surtain. Again, assuming he clears the concussion protocol, he did practice in full on Wednesday. Surtain is expected to shadow Diontae Johnson, and the Broncos overall allow the second fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. They allow a touchdown on a league low 1.6% of wide receiver targets this year. As you mentioned, he's outside my top 30 this week. There's not a lot of things he can point to other than just his pure talent that makes you excited about starting him this week.
Yep. My favorite awards bet at the moment, Patrick Surtain is 30-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think everyone kind of forgot about him because he missed this game and a half, but I mean, it's a fairly weak field. It's not like TJ Watt was racking up sacks while Surtain was out. Surtain comes back. You know, they're probably going to beat the Panthers, go to 5-3. They have an elite defense. He's regarded as the best corner in football. I think he has a path to winning that award.
I like that a lot.
Especially if they sneak into the playoffs, which is...
if they get to 5-3, they're a real chance.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Our next pass catcher, Michael Pittman, Jay, listen to this. Weekly finishes and Anthony Richardson starts. He's started 4 times with them. Wide receiver 53, wide receiver 51, wide receiver 46, wide receiver 30.
Wow, that's the best. That's the best start he's had. He's barely a top 30 wide receiver. Like the top of his starts with Anthony Richardson under center is a barely borderline top 30 wide receiver. He's caught only 57% of his targets from Richardson this year, Connor, which that strikes me as bad. Strikes me as not good.
Bad ball placement.
It's not like Pittman's running 50 yards down the field either.
No, this is a mess.
This is a tough matchup against the Texans, who allow the 5th lowest catch rate to wide receivers to begin with. So, yeah, outside my top 35 this week, Michael Pittman.
I think with Richardson now, like everyone on the Colts, outside of if you have to start Richardson as QB2 or Jonathan Taylor, I don't think anyone is.
It's sunk Josh Downs.
Yeah.
It's killed Josh Downs, yeah.
Josh Downs looks like a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy with Joe Flacco.
I need to see him just complete 60% of his passes in an NFL game. And I get that he's young and he's barely played, I'm not sure if he's even played 10 games in the NFL, but I mean, until we see that it gets better, I don't think any of these wide receivers can be started.
He hasn't played 10 games in the NFL, and he was considered a developmental project when he came into the NFL. I think everyone was so excited about him in the preseason because of the rushing upside, and that just hasn't been there fantasy-wise for Richardson this year as well. So either way, regardless of what you're going to do with Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman is somebody who I think is a shaky start this week, again, outside my top 35 in Week 8.
Christian Kirk outside the top 40s, wide receiver 41 against the Packers here, Jay. Since Evan Ingram's been back, his target share has gone down from 21% to 16.4%.
Yeah, and the appeal of Kirk is that he's supposed to be high floor, that he plays in the slot and he gets all these targets. But now this offense, which, by the way, the offense has not been great all season, but Trevor Lawrence hasn't been terrible. I think he's just been getting unlucky to an extent, seemed to turn it around a little bit in London against the Patriots. Like, this offense is Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram in the passing game.
That's the point. Both those guys have been able to be productive when they're out there, Thomas and Ingram.
Yep.
But to your point, sorry, Jay, you're right. It just hasn't been there for Christian Kirk, especially, by the way, since Evan Ingram, who runs a lot of routes in the middle of the field, a lot of the same area of the field that Christian Kirk does, since Evan Ingram returned. He's got just a 16.4% target share. compared with 21% on the season. So he's getting less targets with Ingram healthy over those last 2 games. And in the 3 weeks that Ingram has been active for the Jaguars, Christian Kirk has not finished as a top 45 wide receiver. Oh, by the way, as we talk about the slot merchants, Christian Kirk not really one. We don't expect him to be this one against the Packers. Green Bay has allowed one touchdown to the slot this entire year. So feels like if you're looking for production from the Jaguars, it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., be ETN, Evan Ingram, but Christian Kirk outside my top 40 in Week 8.
Our final pass catcher, Pat Freiermuth, he's got 3 straight games with the target share below 15%, Matthew. Even his big play against the Jets was probably the catch of his life. He's not consistent right now.
He hasn't gotten an end zone target this entire year.
Yeah.
Like when they get in close, they're just not looking for him as well. And by the way, for all the things that your beloved New York Giants do poorly, Jay, they actually defend the tight end fairly well over the last 4 weeks. They're allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing tight ends. They have yet to allow a touchdown this season to an opposing tight end. So the G-men playing the position tough. Freiermuth outside my top 15 for the week.
Yeah, maybe hold off on the Satan Defensive Player of the Year bet until after TJ Watt faces the Giants in primetime, because that offensive line feels like Watt could have 5 sacks.
They have no left tackle. And I know
Watt. Like they have no anything.
Watt lines up against the right tackle,
Yeah.
but it's going to be a day.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, so
Daniel Jones isn't afraid of taking a sack.
Oh, yeah.
2 storied franchises renew their rivalry on Sunday night.
Get ready, Drew Lock.
Find out if Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can get back on track after their bye week when they face off against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Coverage of the matchup starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We're taking our first break. When we're back, love-hate continues with the quarterbacks right after this.
I think it's always the goal is to have, the best minds, the best coaches, everything. So, having a guy like Saleh around definitely helps. I mean, having a defensive, mind, talking offense and helping us, with things that we might be able to see, kind of some of our scheme stuff, things that defenses might be looking for, it helps.
You ever asked Aaron about him?
No.
That was Packers quarterback Jordan Love on Robert Saleh being around the team. Robert Saleh and Coach Matt LaFleur, basically best friends. Saleh will be a consultant, it sounds like, in some capacity with the Packers offense. Don't know how much they need because Jordan Love's been phenomenal, and he's on top of the love list here as he's got Jacksonville.
It is
what do you got for
interesting,
me?
right? So I was just going to say, so the Jets get Aaron Rodgers from the Packers, and then they send Robert Saleh to the Packers. They didn't send him, but he winds up there. Robert Saleh winds up there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's just interesting. I feel like one of them is going to be in the postseason at least this year. Which one do you think it'll be?
Probably will be the Packers.
Yeah,
Considering my long shot 2 weeks ago was them being the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think with or without Robert Saleh.
I think you're right. I think you are. I think you're right. It's weird.
Surprising that he's gone to Green Bay to help with the offense as opposed to going to San Francisco to help with the beleaguered defense.
A little bit on that front, but I think both coaches are being careful with their DCs not being undermined.
Sure.
Because they're both first-year DCs,
Yeah.
and Saleh's just better than both of them. That's the reality. So if you bring in Saleh and say, help out with the defense, it's kind of tough because it's like, a guy that you like more than me might be taking my job soon.
Yeah, and if you're Robert Saleh, you're like, I want to keep my options open. I want to keep my kind of my foot in the door sort of thing. But see what happens the offseason, because I think he comes out of the Jets situation, especially given what's happened since he's left,
right,
looking pretty good. You know what I mean?
He'll be a top DC candidate.
100%.
He's close with Mike McDaniel. He's close with LaFleur. He's close with Shanahan. Those are 3 jobs that you could fall in worse places.
1,000%. So yeah, and I think it makes sense where he's going to help the offense figure out how to attack the defense.
Yeah.
Whatever. Saleh's, Anyway, so we'll see how that all plays out. But one thing that I think, regardless of what Robert Saleh is going to do, is I think he's going to get there and say, hey, that Jordan Love guy, you should let him just keep doing what he's doing because he's been awesome and he's going to continue to be awesome. I have him as a top 4 fantasy quarterback against the Jaguars. You see it right there on your screen. Every game he's played this year, he's had multiple touchdown passes, right? No team in the NFL has given up more passing touchdowns than your Jacksonville Jaguars, producer Steven. Of the 7 quarterbacks that have faced the Jags so far, only Deshaun Watson didn't score 18 points. Literally every quarterback that faces the Jags has scored at least 18 fantasy points except Deshaun Watson. What does it have to do with Jordan Love? Not a lot. It's just fun to mention that, again, the Browns are paying $250 million to a guy that couldn't score 18 fantasy points against the Jaguars in a case where everyone else has. Drake May has. So we expect Jordan Love to go off over the past 4 weeks, by the way. No team gives up more passing yards per game than Stevens' Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jordan Love at QB4. Not behind him, Jay, is Joe Burrow at QB6. The Bengals ranked second in pass rate over expected this season. Burrow's been phenomenal.
Yeah, he's been magnificent. He himself has played in an MVP level, even if the team, or specifically the defense, hasn't around him. Cincinnati, they're second in pass rate over expectation this season, so they are throwing the ball a ton. And I think that he's gone up against some tough defenses recently that have deflated his stats a little bit. No, they're not the defense they were last year, but the Browns still no pushover. The Giants' defense as well, it's perfectly solid. I think the Eagles' pass defense is weaker than both of those units.
Yeah, by the way, quarterbacks that have thrown at least 28 times against the Eagles this year are averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. And, you know, given how pass-heavy the Bengals have been so far this year, they're sixth in overall pass rate. We expect Burrow to have a lot of success against the Philadelphia Eagles, right? By the way, Jordan Love, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, all the quarterbacks that threw at least 28 pass attempts against Philadelphia had multiple touchdown passes. Joe Burrow is my QB6 this week. Proud Fantasy Life investor, Joe Burrow, as he's known in these streets.
Okay.
How about Caleb Williams coming in on the love list? 20.5 points per game over his last 4 games. He's been QB7 in points per game since week 3. He's a top 10 play this week, Matthew.
Yeah, he is. I really hope Jayden Daniels is healthy because it would be great to see these two guys go head-to-head. But I will say, regardless of whether Daniels plays or not, Caleb Williams should have success against the Commanders, who has quarterbacks that face Washington are completing 70% of their passes. They allow touchdown passes at the 4th highest rate. And over his last 4 games, very quietly, Caleb Williams is the 7th best quarterback in fantasy football, getting you points with his arms and his legs. Despite the fact I talked up their defense early in the show, I do expect Caleb Williams to be a top 10 play this week.
Yeah, there have been some accusations of Caleb Williams being a bad defense merchant and that he's lit up bad defenses. Well, he plays the Commanders and the Cardinals the next 2 weeks, so what does it really matter? And we get that the Commanders' defense has been more competent lately, but no one's confusing that for the Vikings defense or whatever. So Caleb Williams should continue to cook.
Yes.
We've reached a point in society where no one can have success without an excuse.
Yeah.
Slot merchant, bad defense merchant, this merchant,
Patrick Mahomes apparently isn't good anymore.
Guess what? It all counts in fantasy.
Yeah, you're on NBC. No one cares about you, Barry, but you're on NBC, so fair enough.
Others receiving votes: Bo Nix, right behind Caleb Williams. He's QB11. He's got the Panthers. Tua's back. He's got the Cardinals. A good landing matchup for Tua. And Sam Darnold on Thursday Night Football, which we will preview in just a moment here. He's got the Rams, all 3 guys in the top 15, Matthew.
The Rams have allowed the 2nd most touchdowns and the 4th most yards on deep passes. And Sam Darnold, who's got a couple of deep threats in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, even Jalen Naylor. I think Darnold's going to have success. I think he's a top 15 play tonight. You see Tua there. Assuming he plays and comes back this week, Cardinals allow the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. And then Bo Nix. I don't know what the quarterback version of a PPR scam artist is when it comes to running back, but he's basically the same thing because it's all the rushing, but he's now had back-to-back games with at least 60 rushing yards, and there's been only 1 game this year where the Panthers have not allowed multiple touchdown passes. It's a bad defense, games on the road. Bo Nix is a top 12 play this week.
Yeah, stealing this from Jacob Gibbs on Twitter, but he had the good point that Bo Nix this year has 10 scrambles with no pressure. No other quarterback has more than 6. So Bo Nix is just taking off.
He's just running.
All right, I'm out.
Pretty much, and it's worked for him. It's worked for him.
By the way, shout out to Jacob Gibbs. He does a really good job. He does a really good job.
Stuff he tracks, without a doubt. I'll tell you what, why fantasy managers are happy that Tua's back, I don't think anyone is happier or more happy than Tyreek Hill. We got to hear from Tyreek on the return of his quarterback this weekend.
Just having Tua back will get us back, man. Having Tua back, man. He's a big part of this team, bro. He's the franchise, dog. And anybody that doesn't see that or doesn't believe it, go to another team. I could care less right now, man. But like I said, I miss the dude, bro. This whole team misses him, bro.
Sorry, what would you tell people who have you in fantasy who might be a little frustrated from the 6 games?
We're back, baby. Strike up. Man, we're back, baby. Start me this week, baby. Let's go.
So that I don't know if you could hear the question. The question was, what would you tell people that have you in fantasy? And Tyreek Hill says, "We back, baby.
It was very
Start
clear.
me."
He had a little thought, like, I can't throw Tyler Huntley under the bus entirely.
Yeah,
so
right.
We are back. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he basically said it like he's a big part. Like, we need him back. I miss him.
Yeah.
Really, you haven't had fun with Tyler Huntley and Tim Boyle under center? Really, Tyreek?
It's baffling that it was that bad for Tyreek and Waddle the past month. I get the two was out, but I don't understand how they couldn't throw him screen passes or something. Like, it's very strange.
But we are, all of us in fantasy football are very excited to have Tua Tagovailoa back. It's surprising that he wants to come back and that he's not going to wear a Guardian cap, but, we support him in whatever he wants to do, and we hope for the best health-wise with Tua. But for our show, where we deal only in fantasy football, fire up your Dolphins, and including, I think Tua is a viable streamer this week, a top 12 play against the Cards.
2 passers make the hate list. Dak Prescott, San Francisco has allowed 1 or fewer touchdown passes in 5 straight games. Trevor Lawrence, over their past 3 games, Green Bay is only allowing 5.7 yards per pass attempt. Brutal matchup for both guys, Matthew.
We talked about Dak Prescott yesterday in Keep It Open, Close It Out. Jay, you weren't here, but we decided to close it out on Dak. Once we were done trashing you, we moved on to Dak Prescott. And we just talked about how much we don't like him against the Niners, who have allowed 1 or fewer touchdown passes in 5 straight games. His last 2 games at San Francisco, including that playoff game, right? He had 4.3 fantasy points and 10.4 fantasy points. And I think you could argue that the offenses he played with in those 2 games, each of the last 2 years, a lot better than what the Cowboys currently look like. So Dak Prescott outside my top 15 for the week.
So he gets eviscerated every time he plays San Francisco.
Yes.
Better or worse.
Yeah, we have quite the resume of this.
It always goes badly. Yeah.
You know what time it is?
It's benching Trevor Lawrence time.
Well, it's been that for a couple of weeks.
It has been. The only quarterback to score 17 or more fantasy points against the Packers this year is Sam Darnold. Over the past 3 games, the Packers are allowing under 6 yards per pass attempt. They're allowing touchdown passes at the 5th lowest rate during that stretch of the last 3 games. So Trevor Lawrence, who's been up and down for him this year, I don't think he's even a top 20 play. I'm a QB 23, which means in a 12-team 2-quarterback league in a week with no teams on a bye, I don't even think he's a starter in a 2-quarterback league this week.
Yep, agreed. Packers moved Evan Williams into their starting safety role as well, who's been awesome, so their defense is getting better and better.
All right, you know what it is. You know what time it is.
I do.
Oh, yeah. It's Choose Your Lineup time. Brought to you by our friends at Jameson. Join our unofficial call to try to get pro football to Dublin. Just visit jamesonsports.com for more information. All right, now I have a quarterback and 3 flex plays that can help you win your Week 8 matchup. And we start with C.J. Stroud in that matchup against the Colts. Houston has a top 5 and played team total this week, and every quarterback that has attempted at least 30 passes against the Colts have scored at least 17 fantasy points, and that includes C.J. Stroud in week number 1. He's a top 13 play for me this week. How about Rachaad White? He's now the team's 2nd leading receiver behind Cade Otton, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin not playing in this win. His 16 touches against the Ravens last week were his most since week 1. So I think you'll see a lot of Rachaad White. You'll see some Bucky Irving as well, but Rachaad White is running back 26 for me. I think he is flex viable against the Falcons. How about, speaking of the Packers, we've talked about this game a lot. Romeo Doubs comes in as a top 30 play for me this week. In all the games that he's played with Jordan Love this year, he's averaging 13.6 fantasy points per game, and Jacksonville allows the most yards per game to perimeter wide receivers where Doubs lines up. And finally, at tight end, how about Hunter Henry? Yeah, it seems to have come alive with Drake May. In the 2 games that Drake has started, he's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. He had a 25% target share in week 7. It's a nice matchup against your Jets, who have, it's weird. They fired their head coach, who's a defensive-minded guy, and the defense seemingly hasn't gotten better. It's weird how that happened. Connor?
Wasn't my decision.
Are you sure?
Yeah, positive.
Whose decision was it? Because we know it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. He told us so.
No. It's always Woody Johnson.
Yeah, that must be a Woody Johnson's. Okay.
This Saturday night, number 3 Penn State.
They resurrected Russell Wilson.
Continues their quest for a national title as they travel to Camp Randall for a showdown with Wisconsin. Coverage of the battle starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We're taking our last break. When we're back, last call, our Thursday night football preview. We got our best bets for Rams-Vikings coming right up. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Let's take a look at the props bet for Thursday Night Football. The most bet player props are Rams Vikings. Cooper Kupp receptions over 6.5. That's minus 155. Sam Darnold passing yards, both 200 plus and 225 plus are both on the board here. And same for Matthew Stafford, 200 plus and 225 plus. These are significant in the minus here. Jay, what do you got for us?
Taking Justin Jefferson's longest reception over 29.5 yards. Now, he did this the first 2 games. Hasn't done this the past 4, though. He's gotten close each time. Seeing against this beleaguered Rams secondary, who has gotten better the past few weeks. But again, I think back to what Jauan Jennings did against them. I just don't think there is any way to stop Justin Jefferson in that defense. And I think as well, we haven't really seen the game for Justin Jefferson where he's just got targeted a million times by Sam Darnold. I think that connection will continue to build. Jefferson will catch at least 1 for 30 yards.
To your point, like we talked about this, but Sam Darnold is second in deep ball rate, the percentage of passes that go 15 or more yards, and we've talked about this. The Rams allow the 4th most yards in the NFL on deep passes. It's one of the reasons why Darnold is on the love list, as in others receiving votes. But I will say, and because they're going to have some long passes, and I think get in scoring position where Aaron Jones will be free and running, my best bet is Sam Darnold under 21.5 completions. He's hit this number only once this entire season, and he's played very, very well. But he's hit this number only once this entire season, and in fact, only one quarterback has completed 20 or more passes against the Rams. That was Brock Purdy in Week 3. I think because you're able to run on this team as well, he's not going to have to throw a ton. Give me the under on 21.5 completions for Sam Darnold tonight.
Looks like we're all on the Vikings passing offense for props. I'm going Darnold over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He did this in his first 4 games. He hasn't done it in his last 2, but the Jets secondary played him tough. The Detroit defense played him tough. The Rams are neither of those teams. Their back end has really struggled. I like their pass rush, the Rams, but they have a lot of problems on the back end. I think Darnold throws for 2 touchdowns tonight.
Yeah, fantasy-wise, look, a lot of guys that you're obviously starting. Aaron Jones, Kyren Williams, both top 10 plays. You're starting Jefferson. It'd be interesting to see if Hawkinson, comes back tonight, and what kind of role he has. Also going to be, I do think Darnold is, like I said, viable there. You're starting Jefferson. I will say it'll be fascinating to see. I have Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 12, but I could see a limit. I could see him being awesome and getting a big workload because they're like, we want to show you, look, he's healthy. Come get him. And I could also see him being eased back in and having a limited role as well because, again, they want to be cautious with him given that he's on the trade block.
Yep.
All right. That's it for us. I agree. I think they're going to be a little cautious. You can't have him get hurt and then just nuke any chance of moving on from him. They seem pretty determined to try to get a 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Like a 7 for 67 type of game.
Sure.
Or something.
But you would take that all day, every day as well. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. Good luck tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Go read Love Hate on rotoworld.com. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.